So in this episode today, I asked the team to share their honest reflections from the past year and what we've all learned while building our startup. Jam has had a lot of change this year. We went from 11 to 20 people, we launched 31 new features, we also crossed 170,000 users. You're gonna hear from everyone across the board, from engineering, design, marketing, our founders, everything that we would have told ourselves a year ago today.
When you're really small, it's just 3-4 people. Like, it's really important to be allergic to processes. But like when you hit 20 or whenever, especially because our company is 100% remote, you need like standard operating procedures for like certain tasks, like when you are like onboarding someone, when you're answering a support ticket, when a customer reaches out to you for the first time, like things need to be documented because people don't always remember. You have to repeat things a bunch of times. That's just normal. But having those things like codified has been like super helpful. And this is not just at the company level, but like if you just look at even the engineering team, like we now have rules and process in place for like triaging things and prioritizing things and how we kick off like projects and what we need to like do that properly. I think overall as a company, we've gotten like better at doing those things and like more mature. And I think going to next year, we're in a much better spot, in my opinion, when I see things from the high level.
I think the main difference in the work is just Jam has expanded to all these different surfaces. So before, a year ago today is like working on the web product pretty much exclusively and thinking about adding folder support and getting all these like kind of web and dashboard related features and shipping them. And now we have Jam in new places. We have Jam for customer support, and Intercom now, and thinking about just further ways that Jam gets extended in the future. So it's the number of Figma files has multiplied, the number of projects, and just we've like new collaborators too. So we've kind of moved from a design team of one, kind of handling everything from product and marketing, to kind of building out different squads and verticals. The minute the design team goes beyond one person, you really like need to start building at least some form of process. And in our case, it's going to be kind of investing in our first ever design system. And that means like coordinating with engineering at the ground level so that we're all super coordinated going forward, that we'll start using the same component library. Like the components we use in Figma will map one-to-one to what engineering will use in React. Simplicity is a big theme, and it was something that came up in a project retro that we did, where we, for the first time, built the first ever plans for Jam to start having people pay for the service, introducing these different plans that people can subscribe to. It's kind of it was a big deal for the company, kind of big milestone. And we put a lot of time into trying to make that experience as great as we could make it. And I think we approached it with a lot of care and diligence and sensitivity, right? It's like we're kind of asking and entrusting users, we're going to start getting money from them to use Jam. That's a big deal. And we spent a lot of time in the beginning of the year thinking about like, what is the right pricing experience? What are the different plans? What is the price per plan, and what do you get? And what we ended up shipping, I think, was a great start, but we got feedback from the team, feedback from users that it was just a little bit too complicated. And so recently we just launched a new version of pricing that the internal name was Simple Pricing. And that was really like the UX like North Star, is how do we take what we've built but make it a lot simpler? And that meant reducing the number of plans, thinking about how we name them and how we communicate them. It's a harder thing to pull off with 100% precision every time. But just simplicity as a word, underscore, circle.
Doing your second product in a startup is more similar to doing your first product in a startup, but you don't have the founders working on it in the same way, or at least we don't here. It's hard to generalize because I can't say what it's like at every company. Startups I've worked at before, we didn't have a second product when I was there. But here we do. Yeah, it's kind of like you're founding a startup within a startup because the founders were founding the startup the first time. But now they're focusing on the core product and they're still there for backup. Um, but you're building it out. You have more responsibility for what you're building, but you're still finding product market fit. You're talking with users now. You It's interesting because you have a lot more ownership, but you also need to be a lot more prepared and anticipate things that might go wrong and plan for things that might happen in the future. But you still talk with the people who did it the first time. Like it's really nice to have Tony in calls or like in one-on-ones, just because I can kind of see like how did he think through it while we were building Jam the first time, or talking with Danny on stuff like that. I'm sure that's been useful for Maya too, because Maya is essentially finding PMF for Jam for customer support, the same way that Danny found PMF for Jam the extension. Time moves really fast at a startup, like or really slow. I don't know. A lot of things change in a year, and you learn a lot in a year. And I think if I was going to tell myself what was happening, like what to do a year ago, I would basically just say like learn as much as you can from Tony. And I guess the context for viewers would be Tony's our head of engineering. But you basically take on that job, but like at a smaller scale of, you have many fewer users. You're building something out for the first time. But I think it's remarkably similar how close it is, but just at such an earlier stage, if that makes any sense.
It's really getting back to like my first time at Jam, where there was a lot of experimentation and trying to figure out product market fit. And I think the AI project is a small version of this as well, right? Because the whole organization is really mature. Like all our Chrome extension efforts are really well like documented, thought out, spec'd out. It's really like high level of the quality. And with the AI, it's a lot of unknowns, a lot of experimentation, and a lot of like what actually we can deliver. So yeah, that's the difference. I want to see ourselves in a year from now being ahead of, like being just before launching like something even bigger, like some really industry changing like AI. We are not here yet, or we are not there yet, but I want to be there in a year.
The last year has really convinced me that more than do I care about the product, like even to a certain extent more than like do I admire my colleagues, because like I consider that kind of like table stakes. Is there something positive I can say about my colleagues? Do I admire them? Is there something like active reason why like I should be working on this product versus not? Like those I consider kind of table stakes, but the real differentiator I've found in like, is this going to be a positive place for me and somewhere that I can bring my like fullest self into, is just like, do I love the customer? And that is the thing that I learned over the last year. I love doing work for people who are creating things in the world, and like there's a lot of empathy that I have for like people who are building stuff and like dev tools. There's a sense of like seeing myself in them, but also all sorts of versions of myself, and also all sorts of colleagues that I've gotten to work with over the years. Like it's really easy for me to see the different archetypes of people that I've like enjoyed working with over the years in the feedback that we see in the like grain videos that Irtefa and Dani often circulate. Like I see customers talking and I'm like, oh yeah, you're like this person who I worked with at like the, and it's just really great to see these people that I've known and loved through decade plus of career like reflected back at me in our customers, regardless of what they're building. Because like some of them are building SaaS apps, and some of them are building AI things, and some of them are building like, or some of them are QA folks working with a variety of different teams. And I've had the pleasure of working with all sorts of folks like this over the years, and it's just really delightful getting to serve these kinds of people who I know and love.
I think like what I used to think marketing was honestly changed a lot since starting at Jam like this past year. Like, and the biggest change is that like now I see every little thing that we put out as like a mini product in itself. So like when we do a tweet or when you do a video or when we make a type form or when we have an event, like all of those things, I think about them now as like they are little mini products, right? So they need to like delight people or they need to, get a reaction and they need to be good and they need to be like polished. So I didn't really use, and I don't know why, but I didn't really used to think about marketing so much like that. It was more about like, marketing is a business function of the organization. And my role there is to like, I don't know, attract people, spread awareness, whatever, but now at Jam, it feels like, sure, that's part of marketing, but really it's about just like making good stuff. So that's cool. So the first time that I wrote an event reminder email for Jam was a disaster because I was just like going through the motions of like, okay, we have an event. This is a reminder email. The event starts in an hour. See you then. And Dani was like, wait, let's look at this email. Let's read it. Like, what do you want people to feel when they read it? Do you actually want people to show up? Like, how would you say this to a friend that is like excited about attending this event? And when you start thinking about everything like that, then everything, first of all, takes way longer, but everything is way better.
That was such a change for us in thinking about each channel respectively of their own. Because I think you're right. That was totally the assumption before is like, we have our audience on Twitter. It's a lot larger of an audience. When we share something and we link to YouTube, people just go to YouTube. But I feel like now you're right. Like now it's like, all right, no, if we're making something that is intended for YouTube, it should have a good title. It should have a good thumbnail. And those shouldn't come in the last, 2 hours before you post it, right? Like these should come before and actually be the intention of how it's going to arrive in like the final product and the final packaging are actually so much more important to focus on earlier.
Yeah.
And so that's a big one. And I guess that's the other thing that did happen this year is I did have the first video I'd made that got 800,000 views. Right. And I always had this question before, like, what does it feel like when a video goes viral? Like that's like a big term for this. Maybe we wouldn't consider it quite viral, but 800,000 is like kind of a lot of views. And what I learned about that is like, it was clear in the first like 10 minutes after posting it. And that was the thing that I wasn't like, I didn't know how it happens, but like, literally it was like first 10 minutes, everyone's comments. And then suddenly it's like, oh, it has 10,000 views and 20,000 and 150,000 and 400,000. And what's funny is that there was these comments came from a sort of confusion around the video. And so it wasn't like, wow, great fire emoji, right? Like I freaking love your video.
I hate you.
As a startup, you want to go fast, right? And like the obvious drawback of that is like you're going fast and you're creating like this pile of debt, right? And we realized that we can't really do like that model really doesn't work for the extension because it is the core piece that creators rely on to create gems, right? So we can't like ship fast if that entails the extension being broken every now and then. So I think that kind of like, and that informed some structure around the organization, right? So like now we have the capture team. Now we have the C-sub team because like we kind of need this a little bit more predictability because of that, right? So like if everything moves fast, it doesn't really matter. It's just a matter of like what the buckets you're trying to focus for the next quarter or 2 quarters. But like you can't have an engineering discipline being something that you schedule for a quarter. Like, oh, we're doing performance for this quarter. We're doing observability for this quarter. Like it doesn't really work that way. It's something that's why it's a discipline. It's something that's ongoing. So I think at least from my perspective, I think that's a big learning. And I think it's a big learning from organizational perspective because it is like Dani also kind of like set this vision, right? So like it was interesting because it was a real alignment. When something is used and people rely on it, you want to make sure it doesn't break. I think that's kind of like the gist of it.
In the beginning of this year, we made an effort to make our cluster, like all the servers and infrastructure, more resistant and reliable. That's why it's boring, because it's boring now. It was exciting in the beginning of the year because it was giving us a lot of stress. But we had a few ideas, and we fixed the cluster, we upgraded the cluster, and now it just works. And we don't have to care about it anymore, which means it's boring now. Boring is exciting in a way, because you can get excited about other stuff. You don't have to spend so much time on investigating these stupid issues because they just work. It just works. And you don't have sleepless nights because of it. Literally, we had that. I was on call and I got paid during the middle of the night because the whole service was going down. So I had to wake up and get out of the bed and fix it. And right now it just works. You don't have to do it anymore.
I think this time last year, I felt very allergic to any type of process. And that's just because I kind of thrive in chaos. Like, I feel a lot freer to execute and to be ambitious and do big things when there's not a lot of order around me. And as soon as there's a lot of structure and order of here's how we do things, I feel more afraid to take risks. And in a startup, you want to take risks. And so I was very sort of like, we're a startup, let's go, like what process? But as the team grew this year, people brought just the right amount of process to help us move faster. And I've really seen the benefits of it. And there are meetings that in the past we've had no formal structure that now I've asked them to add formal structure. Like, I think one big learning for me this year is not just that process is not death, but that the right amount is a real accelerator. This year, we went from one flat engineering structure. So every engineer works on everything, to the engineering team is split into multiple sub-teams that own different areas of the product. And we were nervous about this and like, what's going to happen? Are we suddenly going to be siloed? Because we actually had this like really great collaboration happening. It just, 10 engineers can't make a decision about one. Like it was just starting to get too big for that. But as soon as we split into these smaller teams, the engineers really started to take ownership of their area of the product, and every single area of the product, like the engineering under the surface of that, became so much more robust and operationalized and just awesome. And one concrete example of that is the capture team started every single week reviewing every single uninstall report, which is a thing that Irtefa and I used to do. And they started triaging them, responding to users, getting more information if needed, and then solving the issues. And they were like personally feeling ownership for every single time a person uninstalls Jam for an issue. And that's something that like Irtefa and I used to feel. But now it's like these three people just care about as much as we do. There are people who think with words, and there are people who think with pictures. And on any given team, you're going to have both. And if you can speak to both, you can speak to the whole team. This was a big lesson for me this year as the team grew. I am a person who thinks through words. I think through having a conversation. But if you're a person who thinks through visuals, after the conversation, you don't have more clarity. It hasn't crystallized. And what I saw people doing on the team, like Hui or Martin, is taking the words that I said and putting it into a diagram. And then the other half of the team would be like, yes. And this taught me something really valuable, which is like, we all understand things in different ways. That's why we've come together as a team to build something, because we all think a little bit differently about problems. And being able to put words into pictures and put pictures into words, like both those directions are really, really important. So it is just not lost on me that the version of Jam that is our product, that everyone uses, that everyone knows is Jam, it started as an internal experiment that we called Simple Jam. And the version of our pricing that is live, that everyone uses, that started as an iteration called Simple Pricing. Like, basically, the simple thing is always better. And the question is, can we do the simpler version first? And so I would love to say, like, by this time this year, we know to ship the simplest thing first, but but I guess I've learned it, and hopefully we'll just apply it starting next year. 1 designer plus 1 designer equals 3 designers. So
Okay.
when we hired our second designer, I thought, great, we're going to 2x our output. Or maybe we're going to 1.5x our output, because now they also have to like discuss and share ideas and come to conclusions, versus one person just being like, this is it, and no discussion necessary. But actually what I saw was the opposite. As soon as we had 2 designers, their feedback for each other accelerated how good the output was so much, so that 1 plus 1 didn't equal 2, it equaled something greater than 2. And that was so cool and so awesome to see. And it makes sense. Design is a thinking sport. And if you have a great collaborative partner to think with, doesn't it create better product? And the answer is like, hell yes. This is not something I learned this year, but it's something I'm reminded of this year, like every day, which is like, it's just a really special experience to build with like caring, joyful, no drama people. And it makes these like small moments so awesome. Like this morning in stand-up, we were all together listening to a clip from a user interview, and the chatter in the Zoom was a mix of real product feature ideas to solve their problems and endless puns about har files. And it's like, this is a joy. This is the best way to spend a 9 a.m.